Next on Relevant Radio, your favorite weekly appointment. It's time for the Nazareth Project. Faith, marriage, and family talk for the everyday Catholic. With your host, Lydia Lococo.
Good morning, Milwaukee. It is Friday, June 13th. Let's orient ourselves and think, happy Friday. This is the Nazareth Project. Faith, marriage, and family talk for the everyday Catholic. I just want to let you in on some great news. Relevant Radio has expanded, and we're now simulcast on two stations, 100.1 FM and 1640 AM. I'm sure at commercial breaks, they probably advertise it, but in case you don't know, if you're not getting a good, clear signal, it might help to switch over to the 1640 AM. We're so happy that we've got a large footprint well outside of Milwaukee, north, south, east, and west, and we're happy to be here. The Nazareth Project airs Fridays at 9 a.m., and it's replayed Saturday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m., in case you miss it. So thank you for tuning in. I was reading a sermon recently by Pope Francis, and I thought, that would make something interesting to talk about on the show. Pope Francis said this: "The church as a whole is an educating mother, is required to change in the sense of knowing how to communicate with the young." He laid the responsibility of expressing the living presence of the gospel in the field of education and science and culture on Catholic educational institutions. And he added that they must know how to enter with courage into the Areopagus of contemporary cultures and to initiate dialogue, aware of the gift they are able to offer to all. Areopagus? What is he talking about? So I did a little research for all of us, in case you're not aware of this allusion he makes. And there's a background to this sermon, and it refers to Paul in the scriptures, who was distressed at the time to see that Athens was full of idols. And so he went to the synagogue and he went to the marketplace to preach about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Some of the Greeks took him to a meeting at the Areopagus, the high court in Athens, to explain himself. The Areopagus literally meant the rock of Ares in the city, and it was a center of temples, cultural facilities, and a high court. So this sermon illustrates the very beginnings of our attempts as Christian, which we keep replaying over and over in the Economy of Salvation, to explain the nature of Christ, right? And that was the very first step on a continuous pathway of how we develop Christology. So according to the Acts of the Apostles, after a sermon, a number of people became followers of Paul at that time. So in the 20th century, fast forward, Pope John Paul II talked about modern media, radio, referred to a new Areopagus where Christian ideas needed to be explained and defended anew against disbelief and against the idols of gold and silver. Now, what does that have to do with us? Well, you know that Americans are abandoning organized religion in droves, and data from the Public Religion Research Institute shows that only about 7% of Americans were raised outside of a religious tradition. Nearly 19% today are religiously unaffiliated. According to the General Social Survey, the number of Americans who say they have no religion has more than doubled since 1990. We refer to these people as the nuns. And I don't mean the kind of habits. N-O-N-E-S. So remember I said that about 19% of the U.S. population make up the nuns? Well, if you throw in young adults 18 to 29, the percentage shoots up to 24%. That means if you gave them a poll and asked what their affiliation was, they would check, say it with me, none. So if you see a young adult at Mass who you don't recognize, I can almost guarantee you that that is someone who's probably looking for a church home. What does that mean for us? This highlights our need to venture into the Areopagus of contemporary culture in our own time and learn to speak and reach out to others in a way that they can hear. For young adults, that might mean using social media and perhaps learning to share our faith in ways that is more participatory than directional. And the anecdote that I use illustrates me watching my husband watch TV. Half the time now, when my husband watches a sports game, he's following tweets on his phone about what's happening on the television. So there's layers and there's input there that just didn't exist before. But it's not just about social media. We have to learn to communicate the beautiful doctrines of the faith. We can only do it after we've really taken seriously the apostolate of friendship. So we can call it relational theology. How about that? Once we establish real relationships with our family members and our neighbors, only then can we bring to them this beauty and this truth and help them to get to know the person of Jesus Christ and how he's present in his body, the church. Sharing our faith takes real intentionality and real effort. Earlier this week, my friend and classmate, Linda Couri, joined me in the studio to talk about this very subject. Let's take a listen. Well, welcome to all our listeners. I am with Linda Couri right now. I'm so excited to have her as a guest, and I mean this sincerely. Linda is the director of the Institute for Lay Formation at the University of St. Mary of the Lake, which is on the campus of Mundelein Seminary.
That's right.
And I think you share some of the faculty.
That's right.
It's in the Archdiocese of Chicago. Linda has a master's in social work from the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana. She's a licensed clinical social worker. Has her also in her spare time got a MDiv, a Master's of Divinity, and is currently working on a Doctor of Ministry at Mundelein Seminary. But the area that most interests me, Linda, that we're going to talk about, we have no idea what we're really going to say because it's going to be a real conversation.
Yeah.
Is you are very interested in, and what the thread that goes through your whole life is evangelization, but also keeping in mind the secular mindset.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's what makes you a unique bird to me.
Yeah.
You also are interested, because of your background in psychology, in the interchange between faith and psychology. And then ultimately how that all comes together in human formation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just find that all fascinating. And you, so what Linda does, why don't you tell us what you do? I mean, I gave the title of your work, but what do you do every day? You get up and you drive to the Mundelein Seminary campus, and what do you do?
Okay, so as the director of the Institute for Lay Formation, within the University of St. Mary of the Lake, we have different institutes. The one I run is the Institute for Lay Formation. So for the Archdiocese of Chicago, all lay people who are going to be doing leadership positions in the church or do any kind of professional roles within the church, they have to go through a formation program in the same manner that priests would go through a formation program, where we are focusing on their academic development, their spiritual development, their pastoral development, as well as their human development. It goes into the formation process for them to be in leadership positions, really, within the church. So my office is in charge of that.
Okay. And what if somebody said, well, vocations are up. We're getting more priests.
Yeah, which is great. I think that we are.
And so why do we need lay leaders?
Because Vatican II directly speaks to this, because by merit of our vocation of baptism, lay people are called to be much more involved in and much more intricately kind of related to their church and being signs of the presence of Jesus Christ to their community. So lay people, it's so interesting in terms of vocations to the priesthood. Indeed, there are more people that are being called to the priesthood again, thanks be to God. But at the same time, there's definitely not enough to be covering all the work that needs to be done. And here is literally this army of lay people that are being trained and are on fire, for the love of Christ and for the love of their church, who want to be involved and to begin to, contribute in really distinct ways within the church as lay people.
Now, you were telling me earlier, I gave Linda a tour of our seminary and the Cousin Center here. I'm always still in Milwaukee. But you told me earlier that you market differently now. You've learned working in this position.
Oh, yeah.
I find that, because I think this is going to, our listeners are going to really respond to this. Who do you see that might be interested in the programs that you offer? And before you answer that, tell them where Mundelein is.
Mundelein Seminary, or University of St. Mary of the Lake, that's located in the north part of the Diocese of Chicago. So it's about 45 minutes away from the actual hub, which is the pastoral center there down at Quigley. So we're kind of separated a little bit, but all of the formation programs work through the seminary.
But for someone listening in Milwaukee, you're an hour and 15 minutes straight shot down the road.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on where you're coming from. If you live in the Kenosha-Racine area, you're literally next door neighbors.
Yeah, that's the thing, is we really do buck up against Milwaukee on one side, Rockford on the other, and then Joliet on the other. So those are all of our surrounding dioceses. So Chicago's so big that certainly once you start to get far enough north, we're right up there next to the Milwaukee diocese.
So someone who has a master's and might be interested in the Doctor of Ministry program, or someone who might be interested in your master's, what's the master's program called? The Master of?
Oh, Arts and Pastoral Studies. So one of the things that's happening now, which I'm very excited about, is at the University of St. Mary of the Lake, we are now beginning our first year with a Master's of Arts in Pastoral Studies degree, which is going to be for lay people. So traditionally as a seminary, we're a closed seminary, so the priestly candidates are trained in their own classroom separate from lay people. And now we've been able to become accredited by the Association of Theological Schools to begin a master's program for lay people at the university, which are going to be specific classes taught by many of the same faculties that are teaching our present seminary population. We'll be teaching the same classes for lay people to get their master's degree. But I think that one of the things that you were asking earlier is, not everybody that's a lay person is interested in getting a master's degree or having a professional role, or even necessarily being a quote-unquote leader in the church. The way that I've changed kind of my approach in terms of the lay formation that we do is to really focus on people that are just more thirsty for their faith, that maybe aren't even necessarily really involved in their parishes, because at least what I've found is that as one begins to have an experience or an encounter with Christ, all of a sudden you become very thirsty for more and more and more. And certainly what's great about the Catholic Church is there's never-ending learning. It's inexhaustible and fascinating and so interesting on so many different levels for so many people. So what I did was, in advertising the program, I simply said in our advertisements, are you thirsty to know more? Are you interested in your faith? Because I think a lot of times when people hear, oh, leadership, that means I'm going to have to be some kind of public figure, or I'm going to have to be in some sort of official position, when really what we need to do and what we want to do is form people to be disciples, to deepen their faith, to make them more committed to their faith. And so we do this through a 2-year program in which you get some good basic classes. You get your New Testament, you get your Christology, you get your sacraments, you begin to know what are kind of the underpinnings, what are the theological foundations of our church, while at the same time working on your formation spiritually. How are you expressing yourself pastorally? And I think, well, probably the most important has to do, obviously, with your spiritual development, but also your human formation. All of this is being filtered through who you are as a person. So you need to know yourself. You need to understand what are my weaknesses? What are my strengths? What are my charisms? How am I being formed by Christ to be the best person that I can be, to bring about more people to be more disciples?
Which is where your psychology all comes back.
Yeah, it does.
You see how you see all 4 sides of the prism. Also, I don't want to just talk about this program, but I do want to make things accessible for people, because I work for the Archdiocese, and people get really frustrated when they meet Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
They experience something is different.
Yeah.
They turn to the sacraments, of course, where they should turn, but then they look up and say, I want my church to offer this. I want my church to offer this. And the churches we all need to do, we can do better, but offer many, many programs, but I think for some people, what they're hungry for is something on a more academic level.
Right, and so something that does all of those things, where there's a progression, where as you learn one thing, it leads into the next thing. And we also do this in an adult learning environment. So it isn't highly based on academic papers and all of those kind of extremely arduous things.
So tell me about, I don't want to spend too much time on the academic, ins and outs of your particular program, but it is offered at nights and on weekends for people, right?
Oh, right.
Adult learning.
Oh, right, adult learning, and it's to cater to lay people's lives who are extremely busy with their family or with their jobs or the myriad of other things that may take up, time.
Linda, before, I just find all of this fascinating. I think you need to write a book personally, but you approach things, you're very cognizant that we all don't come from the same backgrounds, and that we all don't use the same vocabulary of faith.
Right.
And you are passionate, may I add, about we have an obligation to reach out to people who don't speak our same language. We can't just write off modern culture because we find it difficult.
Oh, right, for sure. Well, certainly people now, I think that we're kind of born and bred into more of a secular society, and it's harder to find religious vocabulary out there. But yet, at the same time, in my experience, every single person I meet, in Augustine's words, they have a God-shaped hole. So they're always trying to fill it, and they're always trying to develop a religious language or trying to develop some language of meaning, as Viktor Frankl would put it. Everybody is on this search, on this deeper search for what is truly meaningful. And I think that a lot of times we can become frustrated because people don't tend to use this religious vocabulary or any kind of spiritual vocabulary in order to access this larger reality of God.
And I asked you at one point when we were discussing this, well, can't I just teach them the vocabulary of faith?
Yeah, and
Can't I just sit them in rooms on folding chairs and teach them the vocabulary of faith? They need to be quiet and listen, and I will catechize them, and then later, when they learn my vocabulary, we can talk about Christ.
No, I think that's erroneous at best because you haven't cultivated the soil for it. One of my big problems is that I think that we tend to forget that the people that we want to catechize are people. They are people. They are not objects of conversion. They are not things that we take over. They're people. They're living, breathing people that you can find a place in every single one of their lives. You can find something they're passionate about, something that they care about, something that they love, and you build a relationship with them, maybe even because you happen to really respect them and you're really curious about what is interesting to them, not because you're setting out to teach them something. I think that people can often feel insulted or dismissed because all of a sudden the most important thing about that person is how you're going to convert them. Where the common ground we can find, it ultimately is Jesus Christ, but maybe it isn't the word Jesus Christ for them right now. It has to do with the way that they experience love. It has to do with the areas in which they feel passion. It may be in the ways that they see beauty. It may be in the ways that they cultivate their work. So I think that that's one of the problems is we tend to dismiss people when we forget that the thing that's actually animating every single one of them, whether they're Christian or not, is Jesus Christ present in them and present in the work that they're doing.
That means I have to love them, though, Linda.
I know, you do. You have to love them. Or even find the place where you kind of like them. I think that that's the best way.
I can like people.
Yeah, well, you find the thing that's interesting about them and talk to them about it and see what's beautiful about that and what animates. Be seriously curious about people. Be seriously curious about God's creatures. And once people feel that you're actually curious about them as a person, not because they're an object for you to do something with, then all of a sudden you can develop a relationship. And I think that it will show it, then you're creating the soil for evangelization.
Right. And I always tell our people that I talk to, if you think of it as tilling the soil, the seed may be down the road. The seed may not be there for a year or two, but just you're getting it, you're reaching out to other people, in the love of Jesus Christ. And I'll tell you what, people take time. And that's hard work. Yeah,
it does take a lot of time. I think we can become impatient because we're excited or because we're impatient, Yeah. And these things take a long time. Relationships take a long time, and we're busy people, So we don't want to invest in.
But that's the mission of the gospel.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Well, Mundelein and the University of St. Mary of the Lake are very lucky to have you.
Oh, thanks.
And Milwaukee listeners, we're very lucky that Mundelein is right down the road. So I'm going to make sure that on our website we are going to put all Linda's links to the master's program. Maybe she'll have something that we can read.
Sure,
Just general information on Linda Couri. And we thank her for her time. Thanks for driving up and visiting another archdiocese.
Oh, it's been great.
You're a fabulous guest. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Lydia.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks again to Linda for joining me this week in the studio. Details of our discussion with Linda can be found on our website, thenazarethproject.com. Now we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will dive into the mailbag. You are listening to The Nazareth Project on Relevant Radio. We'll be right back.
So what do you think? Did we make the right call or what?
This backyard is incredible. We have our very own outdoor living space. The shrubs, plants, stone walkway, and I really love the water feature. So refreshing on these warm summer days. Honey, why did we wait so long to get this beautiful backyard? I'm so glad we brought an American Landscape. They can do it all, and they made it so effortless.
If you can picture it, American Landscape can make it happen. You can rest assured that the haven you have in mind can happen with American Landscape. Transform an ordinary yard into an outdoor living space everyone will love. Since 1973, American Landscape has been serving residential and commercial property owners with certified professionals. Go to relevantradio.com, keyword landscape. relevantradio.com, keyword landscape. A proud supporter of Relevant Radio.
And now, back to the Nazareth Project with your host, who may want to consider switching to decaf, Lydia Lococo.
Now we're here at our favorite part of the show. It's called Mailbag. It's when you write in or call us on our dedicated phone line and ask simple questions, things that you think about that you'd like to ask and have us discuss. The number is 414-758-2241. You can call and leave your first name and parish, or you can be anonymous. But you don't have to worry. No one will answer on the other end of the phone line, and you can leave any question you would like. Now we'll get right down to our first question.
Hi, Lydia. This is Jeffrey calling from St. Mary's Visitation in Elm Grove, and I have a quick question for you. I'm interested in learning about the annulment process, but frankly, I'm a little bit overwhelmed, and I'm wondering if you know any good resources or where I can go to learn more about how to get an annulment. Thanks so much. God bless.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for your question. I can tell you that I've taken a class on canon law, and I find it very confusing. So we're all in this together. First of all, I'm going to direct you to the Archmill website. I don't think the tribunal is a page that many people find themselves when they go to the website. It's archmill.org/offices/tribunal. And what you're going to find there is the website page for the Tribunal of the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. And they have it set up very well. They have questions and answers. They have resources. And they have definition of terms. For example, I'll share with you the very first one. You said, I have questions about annulments. Well, an annulment is called, to canon lawyers, a declaration of invalidity. So if you ask, what's an annulment? Here's what you would find. A church annulment, or more properly, a declaration of invalidity, is an acknowledgement that a full sacramental marriage commitment was never achieved by a particular couple. The declaration of invalidity process examined the marriage for the necessary elements of a valid union: permanence, fidelity, true companionship, love of the spouses, and fruitfulness and openness to the possibility of children. So the tribunal's job is to try to determine if there was anything that prevented those elements from being present in the relationship, even though both of the individuals may have entered the marriage in good will. They want to help you in the tribunal. I cannot say enough wonderful things about the people who work there. You should not be afraid to call them, and their number is 758-3300. You'll get the Archdiocese and ask for the Tribunal office. Thanks so much, Jeffrey, for your question. I know a lot of people out there have the same one. That's it for Mailbag. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back with What Really Matters.
So what do you think? Did we make the right call or what?
This backyard is incredible. We have our very own outdoor living space. The shrubs, plants, stone walkway, and I really love the water feature. So refreshing on these warm summer days. Honey, why did we wait so long to get this beautiful backyard? I'm so glad we brought an American Landscape. They can do it all, and they made it so effortless.
If you can picture it, American Landscape can make it happen. You can rest assured that the haven you have in mind can happen with American Landscape. Transform an ordinary yard into an outdoor living space everyone will love. Since 1973, American Landscape has been serving residential and commercial property owners with certified professionals. Go to relevantradio.com, keyword landscape. relevantradio.com, keyword landscape. A proud supporter of Relevant Radio.
We are back with the Nazareth Project on Relevant Radio and your host, Lydia Lococo.
And now we ask ourselves, what really matters? The history of our church begins with striking examples of evangelization. People like St. Paul sought to communicate the faith in whatever new forms were available at the time. Later, scribes would copy pages of manuscripts. And in our own time, we remember the American televangelist Fulton Sheen, or the energetic Polish priest and martyr Maximilian Kolbe, who founded newspapers before his death in Auschwitz. We have Pope John Paul II, Saint Pope John Paul II, and Mother Teresa as larger-than-life presences that filled the screen and made transmitting the faith truly electrifying. There are thousands of instances throughout the ages of how the average Christian sought to use the communication of her own time to evangelize the good news. In our own time, the reincarnation of the written word has many and various forms, including the latest tweets of 140 characters. But in the end, the object of any communication is the gospel message that is transmitted heart to heart. Whatever the means, whatever the vehicle, we need only to find a way to communicate the life-changing message gently, remembering that Elijah found the Lord not in the whirlwind, but in the whisper. Human beings live in a tangible history, and evangelization doesn't happen in the abstract. Because this generation hears and appreciates relational and experiential knowledge rather than directional communication from authority, it's important to remember that we are coming to understand this new evangelization to be a question of being as much as doing. We remember St. Ignatius, while en route to Rome to face his martyrdom. Thus, as the great saints teach us, the primary concern for all of us is that of being truly Christian. St. Ignatius, on his way to Rome to face his martyrdom, wrote to those in the eternal city, "Pray that I might not only bear the title of a Christian, but that I might also truly be one." You've been listening to The Nazareth Project, faith, marriage, and family talk for the everyday Catholic. I'm Lydia Lococo. You've been listening on 100.1 FM or 1640 AM, and I want to remind you that The Nazareth Project airs on Friday mornings at 9 a.m., and we replay it Saturdays and Sundays at 9 a.m. Stay in touch with us on social media. Find us on Facebook and Twitter. We're called The Nazareth Project on both. And remember, we need those letters. We need you for our mailbag. Anything goes. Send me any of your questions on faith, marriage, family, relationships, work by calling our dedicated voicemail at 414-758-2241 or by emailing me at nazarethproject@archmail.org. Today's show and our past shows are available online at thenazarethproject.com, as well as lots of other resources and information that you're going to find there. Next week, our guest is Father John Belmonte, a Jesuit, superintendent of schools in the Diocese of Joliet, who's going to talk to us about education and family and a new app that he's created. You won't want to miss that show. Father John was the past principal of Marquette University High School here, and we miss him, but we're happy for the Diocese of Joliet. Thanks for chatting this morning. I'm Lydia Lococo. We'll see you next Friday for The Nazareth Project on Relevant Radio. God bless your day.
You've been listening to The Nazareth Project on Relevant Radio. Tune in next Friday morning at 9 for more faith, marriage, and family talk with Lydia. And for more information about today's guests and topics, visit thenazarethproject.com.